Today we begin with Psalm 138. It's a praise psalm just full of exaltation. I will praise thee with my whole heart before the gods. I will sing unto thee. I will worship towards thy holy temple and praise thy name for thy loving kindness and for thy truth. For thou hast magnified thy word above all thy name. This is a very important one, that his word is more holy than his name. And the Jews took his name as really holy. It was they only mentioned it, only the high priest could utter it when he went into the Holy of Holies once a year to make atonement for the people. It's a very holy name. We throw it around all the time. We say Jehovah, we say Yahweh. Sometimes in here it's Jehovah. We don't know the exact pronunciation, only the high priest knew that. But yet we use these different ones that are close, and that's okay with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's okay with us working the best we can with that holy name, but his word, what he said and how he has said it and what he meant, and so his meanings are as important or more important than his name. And all of us, he talks about, having a good reputation. Can you be trusted? Well, God can be trusted. He holds his name, and when he makes promises by his name, he will keep those. In the day I cried unto thou, and thou answerest me, and strengthened me with the strength of my strength. All the kings of the earth shall praise thee, O Lord, when thou hear the words of my mouth. When you hear the words of my mouth, even the kings will praise thee. So this is the idea that he's doing here. And they shall sing in the ways of the Lord, and great is the glory of the Lord. So this is a psalm about, and he has this other scripture about, you have respect for the lowly, but the proud you keep afar off. This is a characteristic of God, and how he has respect for people who are lowly countenance, people that are suffering, but yet the proud he keeps afar off. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, thou wilt revive me. Thou shalt stretch forth thy hand against the wrath of my enemies, and thy right hand shall save me. Once again, thy right hand will save them, the strength of the right hand. The Lord will perfect that which concerns me. Thy mercy, O Lord, endureth forever. Forsake not the words of work. Forsake not the work of thine own hands. I am your workmanship. Forsake not the work. And again, this is very good psalm about putting God where he is in his lofty position, but also remembering where we are down here kind of helpless and in need of his help to get through, that we are lowly, and that he will work out in me what concerns me, but it's also that what concerns me concerns him. This is one of those, if you ask anything in my name kind of thing. And it's not asking for cars or riches, but the idea you can go to him for strength. So a very good psalm, only 8 verses, but it's a powerhouse of worship and point of view. Sometimes we need that perspective check in here, and that's the one good thing about the Psalms. They give a quality perspective check, and that's a good thing. We need that desperately. Going to 2 Samuel, we're out of 2 Samuel now. Going to 1 Kings, and we did the first 2 chapters. We've established, God has established Solomon. Solomon has established himself also through God, and the fact that he has now become king. He has taken care of all the enemies and taken care of all the justice needs of the reign of David. And now he's beginning to do his own reign. He's beginning to move in his own way. We've covered chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 1 is the establishment of Solomon, and so he gets established by David. And then in number 2, he takes care of things that these loose ends in David's life, men that have treated him bad, men that needed justice. They needed the Lord's justice for their actions, and so he takes care of some of them in chapter 2. And so he begins also, and he still has Benaniah with him, and he's got the strength of the kingdom of David underneath him. So he's just ready to go, and he gets a great start. He gets a great start because he goes and makes an affinity, he makes an agreement with Egypt. This isn't to worship their gods, but he connects with them for strength. He takes Pharaoh's daughters and brings them in, and brings her in as a wife into the city of David, and he makes his own house. And then again, we think of a house as not just one building and a yard in the back, a big compound. So he builds his own house, and he builds it up elaborately. He has he has a house for his different wives, so he can go to the different wife when he wants to. They're not in the same house. And he has servants for those wives. I mean, this is a big show. And you think about also how he's taking care of this thing and how grandiose it is and is going to be. And he loves the Lord. It says Solomon loved the Lord, walked in the statutes of David. And the people at that time, though, still worshipped in high places, although they worshipped Yahweh there because there was no set place for God. And this has been a problem, that God has not had a place where the ark sat and where they could make a solid building instead of a tent. And this is something that Solomon, of course, is going to work on. He goes and talks, the Lord appears to him, and that's an important thing. He doesn't pursue the Lord for wisdom. The Lord comes to thee. And it said, and Solomon talks with the Lord in the night. And again, the idea of being in a very quiet place, and here comes God to talk with him. And he says, you've shown mercy unto my father David, great mercy, and he walked before thee in truth and righteousness, and thou hast kept them. And the Lord says, and the Lord, he is talking to the Lord about how I'm but a little child. You've walked with my dad, and you stood with my dad, and you've been with my dad, but I'm just a little child. I barely know how to go in and come out of a room. I'm very weak. And thy servant in the midst of thy people thou have chosen, and they're great people, they can't be numbered. Give unto thy servant an understanding heart to judge the people, that I might discern good and bad, that I might judge this. How can I judge so great a people? The idea, he's asking for wisdom here. And Solomon's speech pleased the Lord. I've always thought about this story. And again, the Solomon's speech pleased Adonai, that personable side of God. I'm pleased with thee. This isn't just that the corporate Yahweh is pleased. He is pleased also, but that it pleases this part of God, who God doesn't have parts, but you get the idea. This characteristic of God, this character of God. It's hard to use words when you talk about God that way, but trying to use as clear a word as I can, that Adonai was pleased. And then Elohim, so it's interesting that he's talking to Yahweh, Adonai is pleased, and Elohim starts speaking. And this is the God that controls all of the universe, who controls what goes on. And so Elohim says, because you've asked this thing and not asked for long life or riches, or haven't asked for the life of thy enemies, but have asked for understanding, I'm going to give you this and more. He's just going to pull out the plugs. Man, he's just going to roar in. He's just going to undo it all. He's going to unstop the plugs. Pick a figurative. You get the idea. You know. And so here he goes. You haven't asked of this, but behold, I have done according to thy words. Listen, that's interesting. That's crazy stuff when you think about, I have done according to thy words. This is Elohim. Elohim saying, I have done according to thy words. By your faith in me and in clear understanding of what really needs to happen in the circumstances. And I'm doing, we have Christians who say that you're chosen and God has chosen everything, and God, every action is chosen by God. But here God is saying that I am doing according to thy words. You've told me how you want to do this. I know that there are times I go to my sons and they've got a problem, and we'll look at the three options, and I know which one's best, but I'll have them pick the option. Maybe they pick the best option, but I'll back all three. All three are strong options. Which one do you want to do? And he picks, of course, a strong one, and I'm behind him. Again, this is the idea of Solomon picking the best option, and God is very pleased. And he goes, because you've asked this, there shall be none like thee. I'll make you great. And he's going to give him riches and fame and honor. Kings will look up to him. The Queen of Sheba will come and see them. He even mentions some other guys in the area that he is smarter than. He just has this intuitive wisdom. He's not just somebody smarter, like, he can do math in his head or something. He has the psychological and sociological intuitivism that he can see. We'll see that lived out in a minute. He can see what the problem is, and some problems are pretty basic among people, about people not getting along and what justice should be in a situation. And so he's going to see that and bring that on to the people. And I have also given thee that which thou hast not asked, with riches and honor, and there shall be no kings like you among your days. And if thou shalt walk in my ways and keep my statutes and commandments as thy father David did, I will lengthen thy days. So there's that word if. When you see the word if, it is a conditional conjunctive. It is a conditional word. It's based on if you do it, not when. If something's planned, if you only have one choice, when you pick up that pencil. But if you have three choices, if you pick a pencil, we can move forward. The idea. When God gives choices and we pick wise choices, He's still with us in that choice. And so, and usually it's within an option. We can see 3 or 4 good choices. Which one would you like? And so, if you do this, I will stay with you. So Solomon awoke. So he was in a dreamlike state, and God was communing with him in this dreamlike state. And then he wakes up out of the state. And he comes to Jerusalem, and behold, before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered up burnt offerings and peace offerings, and made a feast for all of his servants. He's sharing this joy with his servants, this excitedness. All of a sudden, the king gets up, he goes out, everybody's, what's going on? He goes over to the tabernacle, which has been established, worships before God, sets up these offerings, and then calls all of his servants and says, hey, we're going to party. God's moving. It's very good place here. And we have the story of the 2 harlots that came before him. And it's a shame that there is harlotry in Israel. This is something that needs to move out. Harlotry is tied to poverty. It's tied to lack. It's also tied to, hypersexuality. If there's no men to participate with the prostitutes that exist, if women can find a way to work within society and work within the framework that God has established, then they don't have to consider doing that kind of work. But here we are, but I digress on that. And so their 2 harlots came up, and they're saying, we both lived together, and we both had children, we both have sons, and we had them near the same time. When we were living together in the same bed, she rolled over, this one lady's saying, and killed her son. Well, she took my living son as hers and gave me the dead boy. And then I woke up and tried to nurse the child and realized he was dead, but I also realized he wasn't my son, that she had stolen my son. And the other woman is going that I did not. And there was not 2 witnesses in this, of course. It's just one person against another. So what are you going to do here? How do you discern which baby belongs to who? How do you make this happen? And of course, we know how the story goes. Solomon listens to them, and then he says, well, tell you what, bring me the boy. And they're like, okay. And then he goes, well, cut the boy in half and give half the one and half the other. Sounds like a great idea. The real mom goes apoplectic. No. Give her the child. The other one goes, I don't care. Do what you want to do. Cut him up. And of course, we see that now from our 21st century discernment idea that he used the psychological means to find out who the mom was. But so he finds out which the mom is, and he gives the child to the woman that cared for the child. Seems simple enough for us. But at that time, people hadn't dealt with this kind of mind understanding. We really have the privilege of strong psychological foundations, both as a people and as a church, to where we can psychologically discern what's going on between one another. And then we have pretty decent ideas. And thanks to the New Testament has a lot of psychological things about how we deal with one another. All of those are psychological understandings. Loving one another, caring for one another, carrying each other's burdens. There's a lot of understanding your brother that goes on here. So, but at that time there wasn't a lot of that. So people were a little more kind of closed off, didn't kind of know what was going on sociologically. Solomon is opening the door of riches, not just in a strong economy, not just of a good military, and we're going to see that he's going to pull out the stops in what he gets and how he gets taken care of. But what happens here is he has this strong psychological understanding that we have also. In the chapter 4, he starts talking about how he establishes his rulers. If we remember that Moses did this when he established the kings over the princes over the thousands and the hundreds and down to the 50s and the 10s, get people in this line of understandings to where they took care of one another at one level, then if there's a problem, they take it to the next level. We understand how this is more like an organizational chart. He sets these up and he gives their names. And he says that Azariah became a priest with Zadok. We have Benaniah, he's over the military. And we have some of these other men that are over things. Solomon had 12 officers over Israel. So he sets up his cabinet. He sets up his military. And now he's got governors over all 12 tribes. And these officers, what they'll do is they'll make sure that 1 month a year that tribe will give to the king's household. So it isn't that he taxes all the people at one time. under some sort of tribute. And remember, he is getting tribute from the nations around him that they've been dealing with. But here he gives the names of these people who have a responsibility to get this tribute, this tithe, from the people to take care of the king's household, to take care of the running of the king. And so he does this, and it says that Judah and Israel were many, as the sand that was the sea, eating and drinking and making merry. And I wrote in my Bible, in a good way. This making merry was not in the sense of we want to be debaucherous, kind of like what happened at Sinai. You don't get a sense of that with Solomon. They were very happily. This was the excitement of God moving in their life and God moving with this king. And we've got this good king. We are strong militarily. We have a good government, a good, strong government they set up with men. I mean, the son of Zadok. You have Benaniah over the military. You have these 12 officers that are strong men over each one of the tribes to make sure that things are happening to take care of the king. And so Solomon reigned over all the kingdoms from the river unto the land of the Philistines and the borders of Egypt. So he covered down to Egypt, over across, and then back up to, again, where the northern part of Israel. This entire area he covered, plus they had tribute coming in. His daily provisions, think about this, we're going to cover this a little bit, was 30 measures of flour, 60 measures of meal, 10 oxes and 20 oxen out of the pasture, 100 sheep, besides harts, roebucks, and fowl. He had dominion over the region, over the whole region. Judah and Israel dwelled safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree. That's figurativism. Every man stayed in his own home. They weren't taking from their neighbor. They weren't taking, I don't have enough. I've got enough where I am, and I can be content and happy with what's going on in my household. By the way, those provisions, it says this is for one day. So if you think 30 times 30, 30 times 30 is what? 900 measures of flour. 60 times 30, 1,800 measures of meal. 10 times 30 is, of course, 300 oxen. 20 times 30, 600 oxen out of the pastures. 300 sheep a month. So you get the idea that he had this vast amounts. And this doesn't talk about the wheat and the barley and the oils and the wine and all these fruits that are going to be coming in. So he really gets taken care of. And it's one, so a tribe does it a month among themselves, but they're giving from their abundance, and then he goes to another tribe and gets from them for a month, so the other get to enjoy 100% of their labors, except for what they bring to the tithe to the temple. This is very good. And God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding, exceeding and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. God gave him this heart of wisdom and understanding, of this intuitiveness, of this psychological understanding, sociological understanding. If he had needed it, he could have even had military understanding, but he was going to live in peace. These people are going to live in peace all this time. His wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of that east country. He mentions wiser than Ethan and wiser than Dara. He mentions these men that were famous in that area. That's like if I was saying someone was wiser than Abraham Lincoln or smarter than Einstein. You would get that idea when you mention these men that we don't know, but that area would have gone, wow, he was a pretty smart guy. He spoke 1,000 proverbs. His songs were 1,005. So we don't have all of his stuff in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. This is what God wanted us to show about himself. He spoke of trees, of cedars. He had an understanding of the beast and the fowl of the air. He understood how fish work. He saw these patterns. And again, very much what we're doing with grid work, pattern understanding is very wise. It's an alpha level understanding of the connections that the Bible has. So wisdom is here. Solomon had that wisdom to understand how things connected, how they work together, and how things work, looking at the nature of animals and what animals do in certain situations and things. And then came all the people to hear the wisdom of Solomon and all the kings of the earth. So people were also moving in. They want wisdom. People want understanding. It's not just a show, a sideshow to, what number am I thinking of, kind of thing. They wanted to hear him extol. There's a certain wisdom that we can have as Christians because of our connection with Yahweh God and Elohim and Adonai, who is Jesus, that we can be more connected and more understanding. We've got the pieces that are missing in the mathematics of people trying to understand the states that we're in. So we need to be wise. We need to be understanding. We need to preach those connections. We need to learn to use this grid so that we can take that wisdom out. Grid work understanding, I'm saying, is the best understanding. Use it, understand, and your life will be a lot better and a lot more joyful. Thank you.